Hey, good morning. Happy Thursday to all my crime fighters and true crime junkies out there. Hope everybody's having a great Thursday. I want to share something with you. In the last 24 hours, my channel's had over 100 views on the Audrey Cunningham video, and I've managed to come up with 4 new subscribers. And I'm sorry, I'm still trying to learn how to see that, but I see that Tammy Krieger, she subscribed. So, Tammy, I want to thank you for joining Cowboy Criminology, and I hope you find the videos helpful and entertaining. So, I woke up this morning and I found that 2 teens in Arkansas, they were out riding four-wheelers, and they found a woman's decomposing body in a plastic container off of a county road. Now, Cowboy Criminology, we say we're getting to the truth behind true crime. All right. So it's very rare that we have a case unfolding in front of us where I have the opportunity to kind of share what's going on. So I'm going to kind of walk you through this news video, and I'm going to tell you what I see from a criminological standpoint. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share the video with you. And we'll go ahead and start watching that.
Out riding four-wheelers spot a plastic storage container with the decomposing body of a woman inside. WREG's Mike Sirianni reports investigators may have a tentative ID, but don't know how the woman died.
Okay, we're going to stop right there. Okay, so the decomposing body inside the storage container, that's significant because you're going to hear in just a minute, they're going to give an estimate that the body's been there for about 3 weeks to a month. Now, depending on the type of container, the type of seal it had, the ambient temperature inside the container and outside of the container can actually affect time of death. There's a neat new study going on at the body farms. The body farms are forensic institutes at different universities, and they'll stage bodies in different stages of decomposition, and they'll find out what type of bacteria. And the interesting thing is they've now determined that different types of bacteria are present at different stages of decomposition. Now, unless you're a microbiologist, that might not sound very exciting to you, but as an investigator, it's very important information because now you're not only able to establish how long the body's been there, but you get closer to understanding time of death. And I'm going to put a link to that story in the description below. But let's go ahead and watch.
Had no feeling at all whatsoever for what they had done. No conscience.
St. Francis County Sheriff Bobby May repulsed by the discovery Tuesday of a woman's body inside a plastic storage container.
So determining cause of death in a case like this can be very difficult. The sheriff is doing a good job sharing the information, but he's also not oversharing. And I talked about that in the Audrey Cunningham video. You can't just tell everything you know right off the bat, because otherwise you're setting yourself up for every person on the planet to give you false information, take your case in different directions, and those directions are not always helpful. Okay, so determining cause of death, of course, they don't know the identity. They're still waiting to hear about that. We'll hear that in just a minute, but it's very it can be very difficult to determine cause of death in a case like this, especially depending on the level of decomposition. If there's no obvious types of trauma. And I'll give you some of my thoughts on that after we finish.
Side County Road 731 east of Forest City.
The body was partially decomposed. We think that the body had been out there maybe a couple of weeks.
Sheriff May says the nude woman inside what he described as a container capable of holding 50 pounds was found by 2 youngsters riding four-wheelers.
She was wadded up in it.
After the youngsters posted their discovery on Facebook.
So the containers, obviously a 50-pound storage container is going to be sizable. I'm going to go ahead and say this probably was not a very large woman. Um, and by the fact that she was able to be had to be folded into a 50-pound storage container, I'm guessing the storage container was not overly large either by comparison. Um, but that does leave to some interesting ideas. But she would take up the vast majority of that container, so there wouldn't be a whole lot of room in there. So let's keep going.
Investigators got a tip on a possible ID
by his son, who has said that he hasn't seen his mother in about a month.
Why do people do that? Why, instead of calling 911 and saying, hey, this is what we found, law enforcement finds out from social media, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. Y'all, if you come across something like that, call the police. I tell my wife every time we watch a crime movie or something like that where a crime's committed, I just sit there and I shake my head. And I'm like, this movie would have been over an hour and a half ago if somebody would just have the foresight to call the police, tell them what happened, and nobody would be in trouble. Instead, you've got this elaborate cover-up and all this stuff. It irritates me. But at the same time, we've all been there. We've all been out walking. We've all been somewhere, and we see something out of the ordinary, and we want to go over and we want to open it up because we want to look, because we're curious. We want to find the body. At the same time, we don't want to find the body. So we go over, we open it up, we turn our heads away, and we look with one eye and we go, oh, it's empty. Okay, great. And you move on and you laugh, and then you think about, how this is the start of every NCIS, every Bones, every Criminal Minds, and you start thinking about these things and you just kind of laugh it off. And you don't necessarily think about it. I'm not harping on the teens. I'm not blaming them. That's just the society we live in. But the fact that posting something on social media is your immediate default, that's interesting. And the fact of the matter is they had to be notified that it was on Facebook. So Facebook, good job filtering that kind of stuff.
They're missing.
A DNA sample was taken from the male and sent to the state crime lab to determine who the woman is and how she died. Reports of the gruesome discovery came as a shock to this man.
They believe they have a lead. The son of a missing, we don't know if she's missing, has come forward saying that he hasn't heard from his mom in almost a month, and they took a DNA sample from him. It's been submitted to the state crime lab. That's not necessarily weird or suspicious, and you've got to kind of take a step back on something like that, especially if you don't understand family dynamics. Now, if this is a close family and they talk daily, and they haven't been reported, I'm sorry, their disappearance hasn't been reported for a month, yeah, that's highly suspicious. But if they don't really talk, they live kind of far away from each other, 1-2 hours away, and maybe they don't visit as much as they'd like, or they don't talk as much as they like, that's not out of the ordinary. But I'm gonna get back to this here in just a sec, after we finish this clip, because I've got some interesting thoughts I'd like to share.
Who lives near the crime scene.
Nothing like that ever happened down this way.
He says he frequently walks down County Road 731 for exercise and noticed the container 3 days ago.
I could see it from the road. I didn't go up to it. And I wondered what was in it. I said, that don't look right. Now, I didn't think nothing of it because they always dump garbage there down that road.
He was shocked to learn a body was found inside the container.
I didn't even realize that nothing like that inside of there.
Sheriff May says the search
So this information about this road from a resident, somebody who lives close by, he says that there's always a lot of dumping. So it's not unusual to find things like that. So he didn't think about it, but he first noticed it 3 days ago. Is there anything strange, unusual about that? No, not really, especially if this is an area that's known for illegal dumping. In this case, illegal dumping has gone to a whole new extreme.
Is very active to find who put the woman here.
You know, these are the kind of people we want to put behind bars, for sure.
In St. Francis County, Mike Suriani, WREG News Channel 3.
Okay, so active investigation out of St. Francis, Arkansas. Lot of moving parts to what is obviously a homicide. How do we know it's a homicide? It's very hard to put yourself in a container and leave yourself there. Even if you were to operate on the assumption that this lady took the container out there, put herself in the box, and killed herself, that doesn't make sense. That's not... I will stop short of saying that people wouldn't commit suicide that way, but incredibly unlikely. Okay, especially for a woman. When you start these investigations, and I'm gonna show you some screenshots of maps from the area, and you can see on the first one, this is roughly the location. The red mark shows the clearing area where the body was found, or pretty close to it. And this next one kind of shows you an overview. This was done in a very sparsely populated part of St. Francis County. The other thing this other one shows that in a perfect triangle, the body was found in between 3 separate cemeteries. So it's odd. And here's the thing. It probably has nothing to do with the case. It's probably just some fluke. This is an area known for illegal dumping, and that's probably why this location was picked. Did it have any significance to the cemeteries? Probably not. But from a criminological standpoint, you want to take note of things that seem odd. Because those odd things, those things that seem just so out there, so extraordinary, or so coincidental, you don't want to neglect those things. They could factor in somehow, but in this case, I don't think it's entirely relevant, but it's certainly something that I'd want to know. Okay. The next thing is, when you're conducting a murder investigation, you always start with who found the body. All right. So you find the body. Are you automatically a suspect? Yeah, actually, you are. How did you come across the body? How did you come across opening up the container? And usually, in a case like this, the individual who finds the body, or individuals in this case who found the body, I would imagine they could be eliminated pretty quickly. Just because you can chalk it up to teenage curiosity. But if you're building a murder case, you don't want to just leave anything out. So let's say we can't alibi these 2 teenagers out just yet. All right. A good rule of thumb is the first person to find the body is a likely suspect. Nobody noticed this container. Nobody thought to look in it. They posted it to Facebook instead of notifying the authorities. Is that suspect behavior, suspicious behavior? It is. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the teenagers, and we're going to try and alibi them out. Uh, and we're going to do that by trying to establish a connection. St. Francis County doesn't appear to be very large population-wise. So could they have known her? It's possible, but we're going to track down means, motive, and opportunity. Okay. Would they have any reason to attack this woman? Is there anything in their social media that implies violence? If not, we're going to move on. Okay. So now we come to the son of this alleged missing person. We're still trying to figure this out. But when people were made aware that this body was discovered, it is a little suspect that the son's like, oh, that could be my mom. I haven't talked to her in a month. Why didn't she report her missing? And we've already gone through that. Okay. Now, I'm not saying the juveniles. I'm not saying the son are suspects. Okay. But you have to rule people out, and you have to do that in a very methodical way, and you have to establish the relationship of the people in that circle, which right now consist of the teenagers and the son. Are we looking at the individual who lives on the road and walks 731 on a regular basis? We do need to talk to him, but I don't necessarily believe that we're going to learn a whole lot from him. Okay, so let me show you what a knowledge of criminology will do for you. Okay, so when you're talking about criminology, you're talking about understanding crime. You're understanding criminal behavior. You put those things together. So what we're looking at, this container is supposed to be able to hold 50 pounds. We know it's a decent size, at least capable of holding a human body. 50-pound container is not very big, so we can assume that she wasn't a very large person. We would also have to suggest or have to believe that the person who put her in there was physically fit. Now, if there's no obvious signs of homicide, of what the cause of death is, we can think of terms of bludgeoning. We can think in terms of strangulation, suffocation, anything impeding the airway or blood flow with like a blood choke or something like that. There are several things that are not going to be outwardly obvious, and depending on the level of decomposition, we might be missing a gunshot, we might be missing blunt force trauma, we might be missing sharp force trauma, or slashes. So we don't know, but we can assume that he was in good enough shape to be able to put that container into a vehicle of some kind. And judging by the road, it looks like it's fairly well maintained. So, I mean, as long as you had the trunk space, you couldn't really rule out what kind of vehicle. I'm going to go ahead and say it was probably an SUV or a truck, just because the ruralness of the county, that's a pretty safe bet. All right. When I go into another video about constructing, doing criminal investigative analysis and building a profile and everything, I'm going to go more into that. But understanding location, this body probably wasn't transported in somebody's Mercedes Benz or somebody's Porsche or something like that. All right. They never said how far off the road that this trunk was, or I'm sorry, this container was taken. So yeah, he could have been in good shape, but maybe not in good enough shape that he was able to take the body too far away. Now, why the container? Well, maybe it was handy. Maybe it was convenient. Maybe it was part of the plan. This seems a little more impulsive to me than planned, and I think the container just happened to be handy. And if you can snap the container shut, you can create something of an airtight seal. And as I said at the beginning of the video, that can affect the rate of decomposition, that can disguise time of death, that can disguise cause of death. That can also push things into a different realm because a decaying body has a very specific smell. Not gonna get into that. Hopefully, you never have to smell that. But there is a smell, and the container would only be able to hold that for so long. It contained that smell for so long. I can only imagine the boy's reaction when that lid was popped. But like I said, depending on ambient temperature of things like that, the decomposition rate is going to be needs to be established to help establish a time of death, figure out a timeline. When you get cases like this, a lot of people want to jump to potential serial killers. And if this was a serial killer, I don't think they'd waste the time or the energy to lug, let's say 115 to 130 pound person, if we're being optimistic, inside this container and put them out in the field where they're going to be found quickly. It does happen, but like I said, I think this is more interpersonal in terms of these two knew each other. Okay. And so I would, if I was based on what I have right now, and here's the thing, you have to understand when you're doing criminal investigative analysis or profiling, whatever you want to call it, we can call it profiling on the channel, but if we're ever called into court to testify, we're going to call it criminal investigative analysis, right? We're setting up a scenario, and we're playing the numbers based on what's most likely. And what's most likely in this case is this seems personal. And it's personal because she was put out in the elements, but she was protected. Most serial killers, if they're going to put somebody in a container, they're going to put them there for a very specific reason. And most of that is so that they're not easily found. The fact that she was found, I'm not going to say quickly, but she was placed in a location where she was going to be easily discovered. Okay. And that is a type of remorse or regret from a person-on-person, interpersonal case where two people knew each other. Okay. Now, how do we know this isn't a serial killer? We don't at this point. But we are going to be aware of other cases that pop up. We're going to be aware of other cases like this, where bodies are found in remote areas, but in places where they're easily discovered. At this point, I'm leaning more towards family member, boyfriend, roommate, something in the domestic realm. Until then, there's not really a whole lot we can do. But at this point, if we're working for the St. Francis County Sheriff's Office, we're building a case, and we're building it in ways where we have direction, where we can either start excluding people, but also start building a suspect list. Okay. And y'all, this is exactly how you begin a murder investigation. And this is how everything gets started. And if you talk to 20 different homicide investigators, they're going to tell you 20 different things that you should be doing next. And, it really just depends. I'm not going to say there's not a wrong way. The wrong way ends with the death not being solved and nobody being brought to justice. All right. That's the wrong way. Okay. The right way is where the case is solved. Somebody is held accountable. The right person is held accountable, and you can, and you have a conviction. All right. You've worked the case to its natural end. Okay. But you want to be careful, because murder investigations, when they're laid out for you, either in a courtroom or on TV, you notice they're very linear. They have a natural starting point. They have a natural ending point. No, they're actually more like the trees behind me. Okay. Consider the trunk. You've got the starting point at the top and you got the end at the bottom. Okay. Or however you want to flip that. But you've also got all these branches coming off of it, and each one of those branches needs to be investigated. And it needs to be investigated until there's nothing left, until you've exhausted all other opportunities. So, you know what? I pray for that woman's family, and I pray for a quick resolution to this case. I want the person who did this held responsible. If I'm not mistaken, Arkansas is a death penalty case, and this is getting pretty close. We have first degree murder already, but if there are aggravating circumstances, that can be enhanced to a capital offense, and the death penalty could definitely be on the table. So, y'all follow this case. I'm gonna be watching for it, and we'll see how it develops. All right. So once again, I'm Derek Judd, the Cowboy Criminologist. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for sharing. I hope y'all are enjoying the channel. I'm enjoying doing the videos, and I hope y'all stay safe. Y'all looking forward to your weekend. Be aware of your surroundings. Be aware of who's around. All right. Just keep your head on a swivel. There's nothing that'll keep you safer more than good old fashioned common sense. All right. Y'all take care.